Welcome to the SaaS AdLab podcast. We're eventually the source of SaaS founders, entrepreneurs, and CEOs. My name is Luis. I'm the founder of Fantom Agency, a digital marketing agency specialized in scaling SaaS companies. And today we have the pleasure of interviewing Sean. He is the CEO over at ActiveDEMAND and also Funnel. So first of all, thank you so much for being on here today. It's a pleasure having you. And I know everyone's busy. Everyone's got things going on. So I appreciate your time on here. And to get started, why don't you just tell us a little bit more about your background, yourself, and really how everything came to be?
Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this. So yeah, I'm Sean Leonard, like you mentioned. I'm the CEO of the company's actually Jump Demand Inc., but we have two brands. One is ActiveDEMAND and the other one is Funnel. And really, my background is actually in industrial automation. Interesting that sales and marketing automation, that isn't where automation started. It actually started in manufacturing. So my background is in process automation and manufacturing and process control. And after a previous exit, I had time and money to take my expertise, what I've learned from automation, and apply it to customer acquisition. So
very cool, very interesting. So how was that transition, right? Like it's very hands-on, and it's still a kind of hands-on setting everything together and putting everything in place as far as marketing automation goes. But how did those two kind of come to be? Like how did you find the gap in the marketplace essentially to create the product?
Yeah, it's a good question. And so when we entered, it was, I don't know if you read this book, Blue Ocean Strategies. Clearly, marketing automation was a bloody red ocean. There's a lot of players, a lot of big players. It was very competitive. But one of the things we sort of recognized, and I recognized this when I was at my last company, is that digital marketing is very complex, but at least it's changing. Right. So it's a case that a lot of companies out there, they're experts at something other than digital marketing, unless they're a marketing agency.
Yeah.
So I saw this shift happening more towards people just getting marketing agencies just to do the work for them. Right. And so when we exited the previous company, it was a case that we thought, okay, was actually the gap in the market is actually very few marketing agencies are actually using automation. And so we thought really what we needed to do is come in and build a platform that was built by a marketing agency for a marketing agency to be more infrastructure rather than start the conversation as an agency to start selling software.
Right.
So we started a digital marketing agency focused on industrial automation and bootstrapped the platform from the ground up for us as an agency, solving problems that we were facing on a daily basis. Then we pivoted, and now we're in the business. Our primary focus is helping digital marketing agencies grow the retainer businesses and simplify the marketing stack and allow them to demonstrate value delivered.
Right. Very cool. And that's one thing that typically I see with people on the podcast is that many of them actually started as an agency, and that's when they start to realize that there are trends with specific problems. And then they start working really, on a product for in-house, and they plan on using that with their clients. And then as they start to notice more and more just happening, they realize that they definitely have something on their hands that they can just mass, distribute essentially and let other people use as a main product. So that's really, really cool. Now, how long has ActiveDEMAND been around for?
So we probably wrote the first line of code in 2012, but that was as the marketing agency, and the full pivot where we burnt the ships because we couldn't operate as an agency and sell to agencies. So we did the pivot. I think it's been about 3 or 4 years now. So it's we thought at first, let's just introduce the brand. Then we said, no, it's obviously causing some issues. So we, because of our target client base was people that we are competing with. So
we
did the full pivot.
Very cool. What was the hardest thing about that?
There's two difficult things in that. One is that as an agency, we're primarily focused as a services business. So the
Mhm.
KPIs of a services business are very different than a SaaS business, and all of our thinking is about services and project managing of the services, this type of stuff.
Mhm.
So the biggest challenge is shifting the thinking of the
So,
company itself,
mhm.
right? You're no longer services, you're a product company, and so all the KPIs you're measuring everybody on have now changed.
Mhm.
So we had to sort of shift our internal staff, and whenever that happens, obviously there's going to be a bit of shift in personnel too,
Totally.
right?
Uh-huh.
So that was the biggest challenge, is basically in house getting the thinking around it.
Mm.
The second piece, of course, is managing the change in revenue, right?
Mm.
Because if what's keeping the lights on is the services revenue, you can't just unplug
Right.
unless you have lots of cash,
Yeah.
right? And if you have lots of cash, you can write it out.
Mhm.
But we wanted to do it in a way that kept the lights on, and kept the funding going ourselves. So
Right. Very, very cool. Now, one of the things that I've realized, and I've experienced as well, is that typically you don't see marketing agencies marketing themselves, right? And I think I don't know why it is. Like, it's obviously you're competing with people that know what they're doing, so it's definitely harder. It's more expensive, so you only really ever see like the biggest players doing it, that have those huge retainers from big companies, right? Contracts, and they have the ability to spend that kind of money. But what is the difference between essentially marketing and finding customers? For what was the difference, right? For the agency compared to now active demand, like what efforts are being done now that you weren't doing before?
yeah, so it's that's actually quite interesting, because when we started our agency, we were vertically focused and heavily geared towards a retainer model,
Mhm.
right? And so which is very similar to a SaaS business, where it's about gaining MRR, gaining sustained MRR, which are subscriptions, which is a retainer model for agencies. So
Yeah.
and as vertically focused, we did a lot of account-based marketing, because we knew which companies we were uniquely positioned to help,
Mhm.
and that's the same now too. What's different is that clearly, when we were an agency, we were targeting specific companies that were not agencies, and now
How you're
we're
targeting them?
heavily targeting agencies. So, and the one thing that was kind of nice is that, even though we were as an agency targeting industrial companies, that was our one of our verticals,
Mhm.
and typically they're big companies, not and but really behind on a marketing perspective, and some of them are harder to find, right? Just because they haven't done the marketing, whereas agencies,
Well,
everyone has their shingle up, so it's very easy to find marketing agencies, whether they're doing a fantastic job at marketing themselves or not.
mhm.
It's easy to find them,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
And then they're usually very like, for the most part, they're rather active online compared to, like you said, like all the others, especially that niche that you were in. You don't
Yeah.
typically expect those people to be super active, so that makes complete sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
the downside of it is, though, and it's actually the inverse of industrial automation companies. When we were targeting industrial automation companies, you'll find these websites that are, a table-based website that was built in, the, you would think the 80s or something,
yeah,
and yet they're a huge company. Whereas the inverse is true with marketing agencies. They'll
yeah,
have a fantastic, beautiful website, but be one person working,
right. So, and that's the
part-time.
difficult thing, right? Like you can't, I guess in this case, you really can't judge a book by its cover.
That's right.
And you just have to, I guess that's when you have to kind of, I mean, what would you do in that case? Like, what kind of research do you do on a company before actually pitching it, or reaching
Yeah.
out to it?
So our play in both cases is we have always used this concept of adaptive marketing and the concept of adaptive content, and that's sort of our niche play as well as a marketing automation platform. Is we can completely adapt a website in real time to the buyer profile and the stage of the buyer journey. So when we target somebody, we can be very personalized, and if they go to our
Mhm.
website, the whole website is about them. So
Yeah.
whether it's a one-man shop or a 200-person agency,
Mhm.
the story is the same. We're going to
Cool.
personalize everything for them, right?
Mhm. what's been the hardest challenge as far as scaling active demand and also funnel flare? I guess I don't think we mentioned like the difference between the two services at the beginning, right? So let's get a little background on essentially active demand for everyone that's listening, and then funnel flare for everyone that's listening also.
Yeah, so process automation for customer acquisition. That's really what we've been focusing on as a company. And so Active Demand is the tool set used by marketers for applying pressure to a population of people to create sales ready leads,
Mm.
right? That's really what marketing automation is. It's for attribution. It's a tool set used by marketers to drive demand.
Right.
And once the marketer has handed it off to the sales organization, one of the things we're seeing is that the salespeople, they're not experts,
Yeah.
right? Marketing agencies and marketers are experts. Salespeople are not.
Hmm.
And the biggest challenge I think any sales organization has is getting their salespeople to actually use a CRM.
Right.
And so what we've done is we've taken a lot of our advanced process automation concepts and baked them into recipes and created a sales enablement platform
Hmm.
where they come in, it bolts onto their CRM, and it just helps them rapid fire get through a lot of leads and optimize their process. So it's sales enablement. So that's really the difference between the two, but the
Right.
core is still customer acquisition,
Right.
automation and automating tasks, etc.
Very cool. So what's been really, you're clearly in a red ocean, right? Like you have a lot of different people that are doing very similar things. So how do you then compete in that kind of space?
Yeah, so there's actually two questions there. One is the biggest challenge, and the second is how do we
Mm.
compete?
Right.
So I think the biggest challenge is, and I think every company faces it, is just one is as you're growing, cash burns, right? It's as you're especially in well any company, if you're growing rapidly, it's going to be burning cash,
Mhm.
and finding good people, right, is another challenge I think that any company faces, not just a SaaS vendor. But how we differentiate ourselves, the second piece is twofold, is we dog food our platform.
Mhm.
It's there's a lot of companies that are at a disadvantage because they do not have active demand yet,
Yeah.
and it's a case that our ability to do full dynamic personalization, hyper targeting of individuals, we
Mhm.
use what we sell, and it's a case when we are really brash about it too, is when somebody comes to our website, the website is talking to them.
Yeah.
The brand is on it, their name is on it. So it really pops
Right.
because most people, even if they've used marketing automation before, and some of the marketing automation vendors do have have personalization capabilities, but to be able to fully adapt a website, it's like
Mhm.
a slap in the face. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, is that actually possible? So
Right. Is there any drawbacks to that? Like, do people ever find it? Like you hear it all the time, right? Like, marketing is getting really creepy and all these things. Do you ever hear that from anyone that visits the website or anything like that?
yeah, and I would say no. And the reason being, and I've done presentations on personalization and dynamic content and all of this stuff, and really the audience that we're targeting, which are clearly
You understand it?
marketing companies, when they see it, they know what's going on and they
Yeah.
get excited,
They love
right? But if we were trying to do this in industrial automation, we couldn't do the same brashness, right? We couldn't. So yeah, we are brash specifically for the point that we want everybody who's really a successful marketer, they understand the power of data and personalization.
right, right, right.
And it's like, oh,
So at this point, I guess it really depends on who you're actually going after, right? Like,
yeah,
and I think you worded it perfectly. Whenever I see something that's highly personal, that's obviously like they know what I'm doing, they know who I am, whatever. Like, I love it and I eat it up. But I can see, like even if it's just like consumer products or something else where the people don't necessarily understand what's happening, then it kind of gives them that sense of, like I don't.
Facebook's listening to my phone calls or something. Yeah. And it's the same thing with all personalization or any automation. It's you have to know the audience, and it's sort of the challenge is getting what I call the robot out of the room, right? It's got to be an experience where it feels natural, and I'm being helped. It's like, people are all freaked out about privacy and stuff, but look at the popularity of Alexa and Google Assistant and the Google Home devices in people's houses. Why? Is they've successfully got the robot out of the room and made it so that it's actually useful, right?
Right. And that's the thing too, right? I think whether people complain or whatever they do, at the end of the day, they benefit from it,
Yeah, that's right.
and they enjoy it.
And as a marketer, and you're using these types of tools, that's what you have to do, is you have to put what's in it for me. You have to think about the buyer journey and what's holding somebody up, right? So if you can add that value during the journey with personalization, doesn't, of course, you have to again, keep the
Yeah.
robot out of the room. But
Right.
for us, we want to just, here's the robot. We want to introduce you to the creep. You're going to enjoy him. Right. And people, yeah, like yourself, is if they see it and they see it working well, they get excited.
Yeah,
So.
totally. 100% agree on that. I would shift gears a little bit more into the personal side of, growing a business, growing a SaaS company, and I guess kind of like how you cope with things. So on a personal level, what's the most challenging thing of having a business, and growing it, and obviously there's stress that comes with that. So like, how do you deal with that essentially?
Yeah, that's another good question. And at the very beginning of the business, I surrounded myself with people that uh, uh, I had history with,
Hmm.
right? And who've been people I've trusted as people, or worked with in the past, and so right at the beginning we had a core group of people that I'd been working with for many years, or had experience at the executive level. And then as we built, we again, we did hiring practices that we surround ourselves with people that we like and people that we can enjoy coming to work every day. Because yes, there is stresses, but
Right.
one of the stresses can't be the culture, right? It has to be the case that you come in and the people you see and the people you engage with are people you enjoy being with,
Hmm.
right? And then it's really just climbing the mountain together. And yes, it's stressful climbing a mountain, but if you get the personal thing out of the way, then
Yeah.
it is just the task of picking the next hill, finding the strategy to to climb the next hill, etc. Right?
Totally. Yeah, and that's the thing, like people, they spend so much of their lives working, like I mean majority of it. And if you're gonna go to work and you can't stand being there, then I think that like something needs to be changed, obviously.
Yeah, and we're very, very, we're very cognizant of that. So it's, yeah, we're very careful on how we're hiring people, and making sure that they are coming in knowing what it is, and that yes, it's hopefully we're matching the person with the job, and that they're having fun too. So. And I've been very fortunate. I've got have some very good people, and people that allow me to. It was actually an interesting phrase that one of my previous the CEO of my previous company said to me. Is saying, Sean, you've got to find people who will uh, uh, do the worrying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And why are you losing sleep over this? You've got
Yeah.
to have other people. You've got to delegate the
Right.
worry, right? And so if you can find people that get excited about their little piece of the mountain and are able to worry and enjoy worrying about that, they're not worrying about a whole bunch of other stuff. And so it's sort of like a distributed nature of distributing the stress, so to speak.
Right. And you brought a good point, right? When you're in a position to start delegating, and obviously like the audience of the podcast is a lot of really startups, founders, etc., people that are looking forward to like starting their own business. So when do you know that you obviously have to start handing off things, and it's a lot easier said than done. So how do you
Yeah.
actually get to that point?
Yeah, and it's back to the original statement, is about the hiring practice. At the very beginning, when you're starting a company, one is, I'm very, you have to be very careful about partnering with folks, because partnering is absolute marriage, and all of a sudden, once the ring's on, things are a little or more difficult than they normally would be.
Right.
But regardless of whether you're partnering or you're hiring at the beginning, is find people that that you trust, that have, if you're lucky, that have water on the bridge with you, so that you know what, I'm hiring this person for finance. I'm not good at the minutiae. This person
Mhm.
is.
Mhm.
Let them do it, right?
Right.
And I've always been of the philosophy in all my leadership roles is find people that are good at that piece that you're hiring for, and give them the scorecard
Let them
and
know about it.
let them run towards it, right? If you're
Yeah.
going to hire junior people that have never done anything before, you
Yeah.
can't give them a scorecard. You can't trust them.
Right.
You have to coach them, right? But if
Totally.
you're hire people that you know or have experience with, yeah, you don't want to be in the job of
Yeah. Yeah.
micromanaging people. Just give
Oh,
them a
yeah.
scorecard. Let them
That I
go.
feel like that just gives you another thing to worry about at that point instead of taking it off of your plate.
Yeah, exactly. And the scorecard is important, right?
Mhm.
It's there's a book I read, The Art of Execution. I can't
Mhm.
remember. It was by the ex-GE guys, and
Mhm.
there is really about the scorecard and getting, if you can well define what the goals are and what people are being measured by, then just
Mhm.
pulse. They'll do it, right? They'll be excited about doing it because
Right.
you've given them the tools that they can do to get their job, and
Right.
you know what, you've described what the mountain is, and
Yeah, they
there's,
know what to do, and they know that it's up to them to get it done. So
yeah, and if people make mistakes, people are going to make mistakes,
yeah,
right? And you
totally.
just gotta, as long as the thinking was there, then it's fantastic, right?
Yeah, yeah, agreed. Now, this I feel like this question usually gets really people thinking. So if you could go back to when you first started Active Demand, what would be the one thing that you think would have made things differently in a positive way?
Yeah, and it is a good question, and uh, yeah, and I spend a lot of time on strategic thinking, and we have a process here that is, since day one we've followed, is building a strategic plan, pulsing the strategic plan, and then basically mapping out where the mountain is, walk up the mountain, look back, see what you made mistakes on.
Right.
So there's been lots of mistakes, but it hasn't been where all of a sudden I'm in the wrong country, with a bunch of people I don't know, and don't have any tools around me. It's
Right.
it's never been that case because we've done this very strategic path. I would say the one thing that I would have changed is, and it was sort of new to me, was uh, virtual versus in a building, right?
Got
And we went virtual, and I think it would have been faster if we would have just bit the bullet, put everybody in house and hired in house,
hmm
and everybody in the same physical location, because that was a thing that we changed probably a year ago, and the benefits have been fantastic of just getting people to look in each other's eyes and collaborate. So if I was to change, I would say go back and get out of the virtual and get fixed office space, and hire people that are geographically
Right.
together, because when you're small, it's communication is critical.
Right.
And maybe when you get big, you can afford to have hoteling and all this other stuff where people are virtual, but I think when you're small, the communication is important.
Yeah. And keeps you from getting too lonely.
Oh, it ain't the lonely. It's just that you don't. A lot of the mistakes I look back at are because it was really just communication, right? We planned this, and this is what we planned. Okay, then off they go, and fighting the daily fires.
Right.
But there's things that happen inside the environment of an office that
Totally.
you can hear. You're like, here, I can go help
Yeah.
or whatever, right? It's communication is what it solves. And
Gotcha.
even with, like, we use Slack, and we've used video conferencing all the time for
Mm.
our remote folks, but it's not the same as
Same.
sitting in an office.
Yeah. I understand that. You brought up a couple of books when we were talking. Is there one that helped you a lot, throughout this entire process?
Well, the Art of Execution, I can't remember who wrote that. It's one of these books that I've read many times over the years, but Blue
Mhm.
Ocean Strategy is another one that I think was a really good one, because it's sort of, it sort of talked about just the whole product mix and how to be. It's okay to enter an ocean, but think about who's there, and you can differentiate by just playing with the parts of the product, etc. So
Uh,
that's
Very
been
cool.
it's a pretty good book. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Very cool. If you had one piece of advice to give to anyone that's listening, everyone that's, a SaaS founder or starting a company or something like that, what would that be?
Um, I would say, yeah, pick pick some. Doesn't matter what you're doing. Is pick something that's something you're passionate about. I know it sounds cliche, but I absolutely have always loved the the concepts of automation and marketing and all of this type of stuff. So it's like every day I'm excited about the product and excited about what we're doing with the
Mhm.
product. So it's I would say, actually, if I was to reverse it, I'd say the one thing: pick people that you enjoy being with,
Yeah.
because it's back to that. It doesn't matter how exciting the product is. If you can't stand the people you work with,
Yeah.
it's going to be painful, right?
Totally. Totally. I agree with that. And where can people find you online, Sean?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is probably the best. It's LinkedIn. Leonard Sean backwards. I have two first names,
Mhm.
and the Sean Leonard was already taken. But yeah, or our websites. Like definitely check us out. We have about 3,000 pages of content on our Active Demand site, and the Funnel Flare site is. We're very excited about it. It's a product that it is in the actual blue ocean. There's not a lot of competitors, which has been kind of nice,
Nice.
and we have a tech stack that's absolutely crazy. So yeah,
Awesome.
either I would say LinkedIn or come and check out our websites.
Perfect. And lastly, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, so you engage with SaaS vendors on and startups. Uh, do you see, what would you say if you were to look and all the people you've chatted about? Is there some kind of a pattern that you see that is as far as startups and success? As you hear people, you've been asking these same
Yeah.
questions. What
Mm.
what would be the one pattern you saw out of all of these conversations you're having?
The one thing that has stood out the most, and I've heard a lot of people say it, is um, don't don't stop doing unscalable things, right? So always do something unscalable, whether that's calling your customers or something like that, just to keep that kind of human connection with everything, especially when you're, SaaS, everything's very automated and
Yeah,
digital, things like that. So that's the one. But I also heard somebody else from Baremetrics, his name's Corey Haynes, he brought it up on our call last time where I brought that up and he said not necessarily unscalable things because a lot of the things can be scaled now, right, with automation, which was interesting to me. And he said, just don't automate everything,
yep,
where you still are able to keep that, that human touch, obviously, and people enjoy that. You talk about B2B marketing, C2C marketing,
yeah.
and really, it comes down to, you know, actually doing like H to H, where it's human to human, and again goes back to the whole automation thing, but that's the one, is not doing everything, like hands off essentially.
Yeah, there's real people. There's real people buying. That's good. A good pattern that you've observed in this is that, like our business is absolutely, we're in the creep business, like like I said. But when I'm pitching to people, even our product, I say realize that there's still people, right? People
Totally.
are buying from people,
Exactly.
and you got to send the robot out of the room and bring the person into the room, right?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, not everything can be automated, but yeah, very, very interesting.
Hmm. So thanks again, Sean, for being on here. It was a pleasure having you. I think that you gave a lot of insights on, how to scale, how to profitably build a business, and just essentially be happy doing it as well. So thank you so much for being on here. And for anyone that's watching, listening, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, give us a like, leave a comment, and listen to your flavor on your favorite platform. And thanks again, Sean. Speak soon.
Excellent.
All right, bye bye.
Thanks, man.